Everyone, welcome to our special live broadcast from War and Politics studio. Donald Trump was sworn in as the 47th President of the United States in the ceremony held in the United States Capitol. Golden Age of America begins right now, Trump said. This inauguration marks the beginning of a new chapter in American politics, one that has sparked conversations and debates around the world. From the street of Washington, D.C. to homes across the globe, all eyes are on this significant event. Catherine Gibson, reporter for Voice of America's News Center in Washington, D.C. with us today. Catherine, glad to see you again, and thank you for joining us.
Very good to be with you. Thank you for having me.
Catherine, did President Trump deliver any notable speeches or remarks during the event? What were the key moments from Donald Trump's inauguration ceremony?
Absolutely. So as is traditional for any U.S. president taking the oath of office, it's immediately followed by the president's inaugural address. And we heard from President Trump that he is going to make America great again and bring back a golden age of America. He went into some of the specifics, but not all of them, notably saying that he would put America first on the world stage, that he would sign a number of immigration executive orders as early as within the next few hours. He also called for the U.S. government to only recognize two genders, male and female. He also went into detail about how he would love to see America feel that spirit and bring us out of an age of decline that he feels happened during the presidency of Joe Biden. So a very hopeful, uplifting speech from President Trump today. He has also greeted supporters who are waiting to see him at the U.S. Capitol before moving on for his inaugural parade at an arena in downtown Washington, D.C.
Catherine, did Trump say anything about Ukraine?
He mostly focused on domestic policy, as many U.S. presidents do during their campaigns and in their inaugural speeches. He mostly emphasized that idea of America first. And I've heard it in some of the cabinet confirmation hearings from his nominees who have been up on Capitol Hill already, talking to U.S. senators who will pass through their confirmations. They've said that we need to put America first again so that we can have greater standing on the world stage. So no specific mentions of Ukraine yet, but we do expect that President Trump will follow through on one of his campaign promises to end the war in Ukraine as soon as possible.
Catherine, President Donald Trump cast himself as a peacemaker in his inaugural address, but immediately wrote that the United States would be taking back the Panama Canal. How Americans consider these words?
Well, it's certainly an interesting proposal. It's something that probably doesn't come up in the minds of a lot of Americans. It's not something that was commonly discussed here. It hasn't really been in the common discussion since back in the 1970s, but it is part of this broader point of view that Trump has, that America needs to reassert itself on the global stage. We've also heard some talk from him about getting Greenland, going up against China in terms of strategic competition. So when you step back and look at it in that context, it's all part of the broader push to make America first.
Catherine, also, what kind of public reaction are you observing among Trump supporters and also opponents?
Yeah, so unfortunately, because of the extreme cold temperatures here in Washington, D.C., that entire inauguration ceremony did have to be moved inside. And that, I can tell you, having been up on our rooftop earlier this morning, was absolutely the right decision. It is extremely cold here in Washington, D.C. So a lot of his supporters who came from all around the country to see him and participate in that ceremony were not able to. They even took down some of the Jumbotron screens that are usually on the National Mall to make sure that people wouldn't stand out in this extreme cold. But they're telling some of our other VOA reporters that even though they traveled very long distances, they're still happy to be a part of this inauguration day, and they're still trying to make the best of it, walking around D.C. and enjoying it still.
Catherine, can we remember how did the American public view Trump's presidency at the start of his term and now to compare?
Right. Well, you may remember the day after Trump's first inauguration, the Women's March was held here in Washington, D.C., which was a massive event on the part of women and their supporters everywhere to push back against some of the statements that Donald Trump had made during that first campaign. I covered that march, and it ultimately resulted in the formation of a lot of political activist groups here in the United States that helped fuel the blue wave, the so-called blue wave, that flipped the U.S. Congress to Democratic control 2 years later. So there was a lot of a groundswell of public opinion to kind of push back against that first Trump presidency. We don't know what that's going to be like this time around because we're only, 2 hours into the second Trump term. We are hearing some reports that he may conduct immigration raids. We are hearing something about immigration executive orders that he is going to be signing in the next few hours. Once those come in, then we'll start to see some reaction from Democrats in Congress and across the nation. We'll know a little bit more about how that opposition to the Trump presidency is going to shake out.
Catherine, also, I saw that at the end of Trump's speech, there was a technical malfunction causing the hall to remain in silence for nearly a minute. What's happened, maybe you know?
Oh, well, I think you need to remember that this is a massive ceremony with an incredible amount of logistical detail. And the fact that they made this decision only a few days before to move it indoors is still very impressive. It was on the part of a bipartisan inaugural committee that plans these things for many, many months to make sure that it all goes off without a hitch. And ultimately, the singers were able to sing.
Catherine, Trump expected to sign record number of executive orders. On Monday, what topics will the executive orders Trump signs address? Maybe also you know?
Right. So in his speech, he himself said that he would be addressing the issue of immigration. So we're waiting to see what's happening with that. He still has not made, or as we're speaking, he's making his way out of the U.S. Capitol or making his way to sign those executive orders. So we should be hearing about them shortly.
Catherine, thank you so much for all information from Washington. Catherine Gibson, reporter for Voice of America's News Center in Washington, D.C. was with us today. Catherine, I wish you all the best and see you. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Good to be with you.
Thank you. Catherine,
all right.
bye.